PhillyNet Squared presents Integrating Constituent Relationship Management Software into Your Website. This program was recorded April 1st, 2014 at the Friends Center in Philadelphia. The panelists are Marcus Iannozzi, founder, principal, and creative director of Message Agency, and Paul Keogan, principal and founder of BackOffice Thinking. Moderating is Thomas Taylor, account manager for CRM Science. At the lectern to open the program is Seth Horwitz, the founder of PhillyNet Squared.
Okay, so welcome to PhillyNet Squared. I'm Seth Horwitz. How many people have been to a Net Squared event before? Okay, our typical 50%. For those who have, you'll forgive me because this is all repetitive. For those who haven't, I'll just go through a little bit of background. That the PhillyNet Squared group is one of a couple of dozen Net Squared groups around the world. This map is actually out of date. We all have different missions and stuff. The different groups are affiliated loosely with TechSoup Global, the large nonprofit technology provider from San Francisco. And they generally have various themes around what we tend to think of it as using the social web for social change. So we try and gather together people from nonprofit agencies, social activism folks who want to use social web technology for some way of trying to make the world a better place. The main way in which we do that is through these Net Tuesday events, which happen on the first Tuesday of every month. We've been doing this since 2008. And on the second Tuesday, which will be next week, we'll have a planning meeting, and people are invited to that. I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. We also have a website and a Google group listserv that people use for making announcements, asking questions, or otherwise interacting with like-minded folk. This is the last year of events that we've had, the topics. You'll see a recurring theme there for crowdsourcing change when we have some local nonprofits come in and show off their social web presence, and then the crowd, that's you, provides feedback, questions, and other sorts of interaction with that group. So this is what we've done in the past. Looking forward, next month we'll be doing something about analytics with nonprofits, about how you can actually track the usage and the effectiveness of your presence on the web. And we're tentatively planning another crowdsourcing change event for June 3rd. As I mentioned, next week we'll have a conference call, which is our planning meeting. Anyone is invited to join that conference call. Just come talk to me afterwards and we can set you up with the access instructions. We are streaming this event. Podcast Steve Lubetkin back there is streaming it through that URL. We're also supporting a Twitter back channel with the hashtag of PHLNET2. And Andrew Sather back there is monitoring the back channel and putting out some tweets, and will represent into this room any questions or comments that might come from cyberspace from the thousands of people that we have out there. Many of them are silent, but that's we like them anyhow. We're also about networking, so please sign the sign-in sheet, leave a business card. We'll try and circulate that information, including a scan of the business cards themselves. People were offered the opportunity to tag themselves with information, a tag, and that has a question on there, in this case about your heritage, which is really meant as an icebreaker and an opportunity to have an excuse to go up and say hello to somebody. We have a strict no questions too stupid policy. So far, no one has exceeded that, and you're welcome to try. A little bit of housekeeping. We have food over there. We don't want to take any home, so please eat it all. You are sitting in a platinum LEED certified building, so we do composting. All of the food, the meats and cheeses included, are compostable, as are the cups and the plates and the flatware. So you can just put that into the composting container over there. Bathrooms are outside, right past the elevators. We have Wi-Fi access if you're looking for it under the Friends Guest Network. We will be using microphones, so the panelists here have microphones. We have 2 wireless mics, which we'll be handing around at the time of questions. We'll try to, anyhow. And that's for the benefit of the stream and the recording.
GPS signal lost.
We'll hear everything.
Cherry Street.
You're here. So the audio comes out well on the recording. We'd like you to try and use the microphone if you can. If you parked across the street, you can get your parking ticket validated at the front desk. You'll pay $10 instead of $11 or $14, depending upon when you parked. And anyone who's invited is welcome to come out for a drink and a bite afterwards. We're being sponsored tonight by the American Friends Service Committee, which is one of the tenants of this building. AFSC has peace and social justice offices and programs around the world. And that's it. So what we're going to do now is I'd like to just pass around the microphone, talking stick. So please introduce yourself. You can say where you're from, and you can also answer the question of if you currently use any kind of CRM software, what it is. And if you don't use it, then what are your questions about it, or why are you here? What do you hope to get out of the experience? So if we can just pass it around, then our panelists can also get a sense of who's in the room. So as I mentioned, my name is Seth Horowitz. I work with the American Friends Service Committee. I work in the area of information architecture and their intranet. And I know nothing about CRM. I'm not in the department that does that. Paul did some consulting with us, and he might have more insight into why we used to use CiviCRM and now we're using Salsa. And I don't know what that's about, because I'm not the right person to ask that for, but so that's my non-experience with CRM.
Hi, my name is Jack Marquez. I'm right now with a small nonprofit volunteer called Eastern Cooperative Recreation School. And we have had a website for years, but there's not much to it. And we're just looking to see what we can do. And also we've heard about some programs you have as far as putting data into systems so that we can use it for things like registration for events and contributions and things like that.
Hi, Aaron Bauman. I am a programmer at Message Agency. I work a lot with Drupal and Salesforce. So I'm here with Marcus just to support, answer any technical questions. We work with a lot of nonprofits regionally and nationally, and I'll let Marcus tell you more about Message Agency.
And actually, Aaron's very modest, but he is the original developer of the suite of modules that integrate Drupal and Salesforce. So he's just very.
Hi, I'm Rosa with Strawberry Moon Plant-Based Gifts. It's a for-profit that donates a portion of the proceeds to nonprofits. And unlike Aaron, this is a major weakness for me. I know nothing like Seth about CRM. I'm here to learn.
I'm Brenda Bonham. I'm a freelance marketing professional, and I've worked on not-for-profits, public agencies. I work on the marketing side, not the CRM side, but always good to know what the tools and resources are, and because there is inevitably overlap. So just trying to find out what the latest is.
Hi, I'm Naomi. I am a librarian, but I'm not actually here in that capacity. I'm trying to help my spouse get a after-school care program set up, and she needs some kind of CRM, and I know more about computers than she does, so that nominates me. So I'm hoping to learn what I can.
I'm Vivekanandan from Philadelphia. I work with a bunch of groups inside and outside the country. I'm here for a little help from my webpage. I really don't know how to do that. So that's one of the reasons.
I'm Deborah. I work for a big nonprofit, and I volunteer with and involved with several small nonprofits. I am web ambassador for Society Hill Synagogue, and CRM is something that I think we could really use, but I don't know anything about it.
Hi, I'm Bob Pierce. I'm a solutions consultant with Salesforce.com, and I was excited to find out about this meeting because one of my extracurricular activities last year was to volunteer as the pro bono Salesforce admin for the One Fund, which was set up in the wake of the Boston Marathon bombing, and it was just a great experience to help them get set up and process all their donations and build relationships with all those donors. So nice to discover this group.
Hi, I'm Tim Siftar. I'm a librarian at Drexel University for their computing group, and Computing and Informatics. They have a new name. And I volunteer at a couple little not-for-profits, some of which use WordPress, one of which uses Drupal, and I'll just learn more here tonight about what those options are, what that opens up.
Hi, I'm Brian Boehm. I'm a web developer at New Media Solutions, and we work with a lot of nonprofits, and I have some experience with a few CRM systems, but I'm just curious and want to learn a little bit more. Thanks.
I'm Kevin McConaughey. I'm also a developer at New Media Solutions. He said it.
I'm Alex Whiting. I've had a number of different businesses throughout the years. Currently, I'm helping a number of nonprofits with Salesforce.com and some other CRM stuff.
Hi, Mitch Collier. I work for a company that does health and science communications projects for federal agencies, and haven't used. Actually, we've used Constant Contact and some other similar systems. Interested to learn about more.
I'm Nicole Newman. My company is Newman Networks. I help small businesses take advantage of technology. And I've had experience with Contextually, Nimble, Zoho, and I think that's it. And I don't like them, any of them. And I have about 8,000 people on my list, and it's too hard to manage them. So I'm looking for easier ways to manage all these people.
My name is Paul Matheson. I run a professional services firm, PJ Matheson. Among our pro bono activities is political redistricting reform, and interested in how CRM may fit into some of the efforts we're working on in that area.
My name is Adam Lang. Beginning of this year, I started my own IT consulting firm business. It's a person of one right now, and while the main focus was things like network security, currently website design has been paying the bills. And I'm a large proponent of Drupal and integrating the CiviCRM product in as well.
Hey, my name is Mike Lamond. I'm on the board of the Brain Injury Association of Delaware. We've been undergoing a reorganization. We're looking for an executive director right now, headquartered in Dover, Delaware. And I'm interested in seeing what's available. We just redid the website and seeing what's available for fundraising that would be sort of tailored for nonprofits.
Good evening. My name is Lamar Kendrick, and I'm here as a regular attendee. And I have been using Zoho, but am looking to upgrade. My day job is to operate at the intersection of commerce and community, and working with nonprofit organizations and business owners on a variety of organizational challenges, from finance to marketing to business development.
My name is Mills. I'm thinking about starting a conflict resolution nonprofit, and I know nothing about CRM.
Jerry Foss, Chestnut Hill Friends Meeting. We have a Drupal site, and we're interested in CRM.
My name's Marcia. My background's in education and research, and I'm interested in learning more about CRM. Also, I should add, I'm involved with a number of nonprofits, including Tech Girls.
Phil Jones, also with from Chestnut Hill Friends Meeting. Everything Terry said.
Hi, my name is Andrew Sather. I work at Jenkins Law Library. We are a small membership-based law library. We actually operate a CRM that runs on top of very typical library-related software. It was built for us 13 years ago. We paid a development shop to do it. It's custom built, and I'm the guy that's supposed to make sure it still works a dozen years later. So I'm looking forward to this. I have a little experience with CiviCRM, Sugar, and Salesforce, but not a deep knowledge of any of those.
Steve, I know you can't put the camera on yourself.
Oh, watch me.
But you can.
I can. I absolutely can. We can do this. We can do this. Selfie. All right. I finally get on camera. I am Steve Lubetkin. Some of you know me as Podcast Steve on Twitter, and tonight I'm here with my statebroadcastnews.com division, which provides live streaming and video news gathering services for organizations, companies, and anybody else that wants to pay us for it.
Okay, I just wanted to reiterate that we are very informal. We will not take a formalized break, so feel free to get up at any point and go get some food, go to the bathroom. The presenters won't be insulted if you do. I would like to ask for a volunteer for when we get into the Q&A to be able to run the other mic, and myself and is that a volunteer? Mills is a volunteer? Okay, great. So I think we're ready to go, and it's over to you.
Great. Thanks so much, Seth, and thanks everybody for coming out tonight. My name's Thomas Taylor. I'm an account manager with CRM Science, which is a Salesforce consulting shop based here in the Philadelphia region. Before I was with them, I've worked for nonprofits for a bunch of years, and I'm really glad to be back here at Philly Net Squared after a far too long absence. So before I continue, I'm going to turn it over to Paul and Marcus for introductions, and then I've got a couple of other things to say.
Hi, I'm Paul Keogan. I'm owner of BackOffice Thinking. We are a small consulting firm with about 10 people. We work only for nonprofits. Most of our work is in CiviCRM, and that's what I'm going to be talking about tonight. We do some Salesforce work, and of course we work with a variety of CMSs, and what my primary goal is, why we started BackOffice Thinking, was to help nonprofits understand technology better and really utilize it to meet their mission.
And good evening, everyone. My name is Marcus Iannozzi. I'm the principal of Message Agency. We are a Philadelphia-based Drupal shop. We're also a B Corp and a social enterprise. We work only with nonprofits as well. We also only have 10 employees as well. And we're very well known for actually for integrating Drupal with Salesforce, which is one of the reasons we're here tonight. We started years ago actually with a project for the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance when Thomas was their IT director, and did one of the first bi-directional integrations with that solution, and it became a suite of modules that we distributed to the rest of the community.
Great. So as we went around the room, as one thing that hasn't changed about Philly Net Squared since I was here, not only are we still 50-50 newbies and people that have been here before, there's still a pretty wide range of technology understanding. So I want to sort of take a quick step back and just, we've been throwing, particularly the acronyms. I want to make sure we're, defining those and making sure that everybody understands what we're talking about. In the event promo, I used a somewhat against my better judgment, used the shorthand for CRM, called it a database of people. The acronym itself, so Salesforce.com, which is this, Fortune 500 company, many times, most innovative firm. Bob is one of, 10,000 employees of the company. And most of their business is with, Dell, HP, very large companies use Salesforce. CRM is their stock symbol, in fact. And when Salesforce says CRM, they're talking about customer relationship management. In the nonprofit sector, we take that and refer to it, and we change that first C to be constituent relationship management. And we do that very intentionally to encompass the wide variety of people that a nonprofit organization may need to be in touch with and understand their relationship to. So a lot of nonprofits start the CRM journey by thinking about their donors, and that's obviously a very important piece of information. But I would argue that if what you have, I would argue that there's a big difference between a donor database and a CRM. And a CRM allows you to understand a wider array of relationships than just your current and prospective donors. It could be event attendees. It could be It could be people that you serve. That's a really important one, and it could be your volunteers. It could be, when I worked for the Greater Philadelphia Cultural Alliance, we were an association of arts organizations, so it could be your patrons, people who come and buy a ticket, which is not quite the same thing as making a donation. Some of you talked about kids, so it could be the caregivers in your families. Your actual students, and you want to understand all the touches that you have with those people. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about constituent relationship management. We're talking about a database that lets you manage not just you definitely want, your email addresses and your phone numbers, and, maybe you want a street address if you're sending out mail still. I was laughing the other day about, Salesforce just turned 15, and there's still a standard field in Salesforce called fax opt-out, so that people can opt out of your bulk faxes. Not too many people using that still, but you also want to understand who spoke to that person when. What was the result of that conversation? If you're even in donor management, how are you talking to donors over time to encourage them to deepen their relationship with your organization and to encourage them to increase their level of engagement when that's appropriate. And so tonight we're focusing not just on CRM, but on integrating your CRM with your website. So the other acronym that's been thrown around here a few times is CMS. That means Content Management System. People mentioned a few different ones: Drupal, WordPress. Basically software that sits on a website and lets you manage your website, create content for it, without having to use Dreamweaver specifically and write individual web pages. It's software that itself has a database and sort of dynamically builds and presents your pages to people that come and visit your website. So why might you want to integrate those two things? And in particular, we're talking about content management systems mostly that allow authentication, so that when somebody comes and visits your website, your constituents can log in with a username and password. And once they've done that, that allows you to tie them specifically to a record, perhaps in your CRM. And then as they take actions on your website, filling out a form to contact their representative, signing up for an event, making a donation, indicating that they are planning to come to an open house, registering their child for camp or after school care. All of those transactions can be automatically recorded in your database. And so that's what we're going to talk about here tonight. So I want to quickly introduce the two specific solutions without stealing too much of Paul and Marcus's thunder. So I'm definitely, I'm a Salesforce professional. It's how I make my living, but I'm a big admirer and appreciate very much CiviCRM's space in the software ecosystem. CiviCRM is an open source software, which means you can get the source code for free, and you can run the software for free. You're going to have to pay somebody to run a web server to host it for you, but you can acquire that software without any restrictions. You're going to own it forever. You can have as many users as you want. There are no restrictions on its use. And it's built from the ground up for nonprofit organizations, so that it comes right out of the box with functions for donor management, bulk email. There's lots of new ones coming out all the time. Paul can fill you in a little bit on the different Civi modules that can help you with that. It's very well respected in the nonprofit space. They've got over 10,000 organizations that are using it on a regular basis. Just a couple of weeks ago at the National Nonprofit Technology Conference, their lead developer, Donald Lobo, won the Pizzagatti Prize, which is for software in the public interest, sort of recognizing his contribution of time and energy and intellect to software for the betterment of nonprofits. And CiviCRM has also been built from the ground up to work within and next to your content management system. It works with 3 major open source content management systems right out of the box. Salesforce is a very different animal. As I said, Salesforce as a company is, a large, very large firm, Fortune 500 company. I went to their annual conference in San Francisco in November with, 100,000 other people throughout all of downtown San Francisco. It's really quite an event. But one of the things that is unique about Salesforce as a large firm is their philanthropic model. From the get-go, Salesforce has had what they call their 1-1-1 model. They give 1% of product, 1% of time, allowing people like Bob to go out and do volunteer projects for nonprofit organizations, and 1% of equity to nonprofit organizations. So the very practical implication of that is any nonprofit can receive 10 free licenses of one of their upper level products, the Enterprise Sales Cloud, up to 10 user licenses for free, and additional licenses for all products, and users beyond 10 are very deeply discounted for use by nonprofits. So this has led to a lot of nonprofits adopting Salesforce because it is a very powerful platform, and has created an industry for people like me and Marcus and Aaron and a couple other folks to help implement Salesforce for nonprofits. And so the foundation has also built some free open source packages that sit on top of Salesforce that sort of take this business-to-business sales software that you wouldn't necessarily think of as working in the nonprofit model, and adapting it to basic nonprofit donor management, nonprofit management, and other CRM functions. And then there are other third-party solutions that you can add into Salesforce to perform other programmatic tasks within Salesforce. Salesforce has what's called an open API, an application programming interface. So smart people like Aaron and Marcus can write computer code that pushes data into Salesforce and pulls it back out. And so what Message Agency and others have done is built software that works with Drupal, perhaps other content management systems, to do that push and pull of data in and out. So that's about all I have to say about an introduction to CRM and CMS management, and I'll certainly be glad to answer any questions a little bit later. But now I'm going to turn it over to Marcus to talk a little bit specifically about Drupal and Salesforce.
How many people in the room are familiar with Drupal? Okay, so that's a fair number. That's good. So you will know then that it's an open source content management system. It is among maybe the top 3 or 4, along with Clone, which has declined in use really lately, WordPress, and Joomla. And it's a platform that we selected very early on as our CMS of choice. And we did that because we felt like it had a really flexible architecture. It wasn't just like a blogging engine. It was more like a platform and a development platform. And you can do a lot more with it. So we chose, I think in maybe 2005, to start working with it. And in 2007, when Salesforce became a little more popular among nonprofits, although still there were very few early adopters, we looked at what the potential was to integrate these two solutions. And given the open API that Thomas mentioned, and given Drupal's API, we knew that we'd be able to find a way to connect these two systems, not only to take information that administrators managing the CMS or end users were populating in forms in Drupal and passing it to Salesforce, but also information that was stored in Salesforce being passed to Drupal and ultimately not only providing information to end users, but possibly even governing their experience on the site, so that based on a particular status, in sale that was stored in Salesforce, you could show specific content to that user. You could target them in different ways, and you could really do something that's a lot more sophisticated. So what we did was build basically a mapping solution. I should say Aaron built a mapping solution that takes objects and fields in Drupal and maps them to objects and fields in Salesforce. And what's really wonderful about that particular integration is if you know Drupal at all, you know that it has a content creation kit. And you can create, using a GUI, any object and add any fields to that object. So you can get extremely creative with how these two solutions work together. It isn't as though there's a package and this is how donations work and this is how volunteer forms work. And you just sort of plug those in and you're restricted to how those features can work based on what the original developer intended. Instead, you have essentially two fully mature platforms, and then you have a suite of modules that are, behave a little bit like middleware, but really what they do is map the data across those two solutions and govern, what the pace is of data passing back and forth, whether it's synchronous, meaning it's happening at the same time, or asynchronous, meaning it sort of passes, whenever there's an update that's called for. So you can do something very, very creative with it. We've done things as simple as basic donation forms, basic, transactions using, an online shop, event registration. We've built entire volunteer management solutions using this. So one example is an organization called Cradles to Crayons, and their entire organization is driven by volunteers. Not only people volunteering product, but their entire operation is getting volunteers in to package those products to give them out to nonprofit organizations. And so they have a massive need. Like, it's every weekend there's thousands of volunteers that go through their giving factory. And so they not only are able to sign up ahead of time, through Drupal and be waiting in Salesforce as volunteers for particular slots, they're also able, when they walk in, to sign in on a kiosk. And that tells Salesforce this person, they arrived, they reported at a certain time, and they spent X number of hours either by themselves or with their group. So you can really use it for a variety of things. And that's probably about all. I can answer any questions really about use cases, but also if you have specific technical questions, Aaron is here.
Let me give you a little update on CiviCRM and also the content management systems that it works with. First, has anyone heard of a website called Built With? All right, that's one of my favorite websites because as we sit here and say, oh, well, Drupal's so popular and WordPress is so popular, those guys actually track what is running the web. And you can go to I think it's builtwith.com or builtwith.org, I forget which one it is, .com. You can go there and you can say, all right, what are the top content management systems, these CMSs? And you'll see that WordPress dominates the marketplace, and Drupal and Joomla are similar, and then there's a lot of other smaller ones. As you get larger, as the sites get larger, Drupal becomes a much higher percentage of that market share. And that's because as you become more complicated and more sophisticated in what you need, Drupal has an architecture that allows you to do that. And just as Marcus was saying, it's really flexible. It's got a really strong architecture. So when we work with nonprofits, one of my questions always is I want to understand what their needs are, how sophisticated they are, and how much integration do they really need between their CRM and their CMS. If you have simple needs, WordPress is a great solution. It will integrate with CiviCRM. And eventually, it's going to be integrating with Salesforce. I'm sure Marcus or someone else will develop that within the next year or so. But it does have its limitations. A lot of people will tell you that WordPress is very easy to use, much easier to use than Drupal. And that's true. However, if you use a firm like Marcus's firm or our firm to help you with that, or other organizations out there, we make it so that it is very simple to use. But the initial startup and getting it sort of set up, Drupal is definitely harder to use. So easy websites to set up, but not that sophisticated. WordPress is a really good solution. As soon as you start needing to do more integration and thinking about how your pages are displayed in different contexts and what user permission needs to be in different fields you need in different places, that's when Drupal really starts to take over. Now, CiviCRM natively integrates with Drupal, Joomla, and WordPress. Now, I don't know if anyone said there are Joomla users in the room. It's not my favorite content management system. It used to be a lot more popular than what it is today. But right now, CiviCRM, most of the work is with Drupal, and some of the work is with WordPress. And that's primarily because people who want a complex CRM have complex needs in their content management system as well. So by far the most popular tool is Drupal, whether you use CiviCRM or you use Salesforce. We work with Salesforce as well. Last year, I think we did about 8 or 9 implementations of Salesforce. We probably did about 20 implementations of CiviCRM. One of the questions I always ask early on, because we do a lot of sort of bake-offs between a variety of different content management systems and CRMs, and for people that sort of want what they want and are really want to get into the data structure and how it works and have a lot of things that they need to change, Civi is a really, really good solution. For something that you're not looking to do too much change with, I think Salesforce is a lot easier to get started with. A lot of people look at Salesforce and Civi and see, oh, this is free for nonprofits. Civi is completely free for everybody. Salesforce put some limitations on it, but like we like to say in industry, it's free like kittens. So, and I'd say, and Marcus and I were just up here talking about it, is I'd say at least half of the clients that come to us, not half of our clients, but half the people that come to us asking for help say, well, we installed Salesforce and or Drupal and or CiviCRM and or you name the other CRM, CMS, and we had an intern do it, or we had someone we didn't know they were doing it, and now we're like, it's just broken and we need your help. And by the way, we don't have any money because we're a nonprofit. Can you help us? And, I will usually give them some time over the phone, but, that's a really difficult place to be. And that is, if you're starting up a nonprofit or thinking about doing a CRM, I encourage you to find someone who knows that CRM extremely well. Doesn't have to be a paid agency like ours, but find somebody, because if you don't, it will be much more expensive over the long run. So sorry to get on that one, but I see it all the time.
And just to echo what Paul was saying, there are a number of times we get phone calls about, can you rescue our failed Drupal Salesforce integration? And we don't always love getting those projects, but the lessons that we've learned is that having something this sophisticated does require an investment, and there are ways that even small organizations can do this. A number of our clients have sought out funding specifically for this kind of a solution, and there are a few funders that we know in town that will fund this, and they come to us. We'll do an initial requirements analysis for them, a very just a basic sort of interviews with them and figuring out what their needs are. Does this make sense for them, first of all? So you can find consultants who will help you, who help guide you in what are we trying to do? What are our requirements, and how does that then get built out into software? And then once you have a document that outlines that, you can go to a funder and say, this is really what we want to do. We've made an initial investment in working with someone to figure out what it is, so we know we're doing the right thing or have a good idea about what it is that we're doing, and they're more likely to give you that grant. And you can move ahead with that project and phase it out in ways that make sense for you, because this level of integration, again, you can do something very simple, but if you really want to leverage the power that these two solutions give you, whether it's CiviCRM and Drupal, or CiviCRM and WordPress, or Drupal and Salesforce, you really need to plan that out, and you can't do it all at once. It is usually one of the biggest risks that we identify with projects is if a client wants to rebuild and redesign their website at the same time that they want to implement. This is what the Cultural Alliance did this back in 2007, but also, implement a CRM at the same time, customize it, migrate all their data, and roll this all out at once. And that's always a recipe for a disaster, because most often nonprofits do not have the capacity on staff to handle all of that work in addition to what you're doing in your data. So you really have to plan out projects like this. They'll take several years to come to full fruition and mature. And you do want to find a partner that's going to be with you. Sometimes it's good to not necessarily partner with the vendor. Sometimes you can partner with a vendor who's going to implement and design, but you can also find independent project managers or independent consultants who will help you just think through your data management needs and articulate that and serve as a bridge between your organization and the vendor. And sometimes that investment will save you a great deal of money and time and frustration at the other end.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'll since Marcus sort of called me out there, I'll speak briefly to the experience that the Cultural Alliance had, where when we started a project, back up. So the Cultural Alliance is an association of around 400 arts and culture organizations here in the region. Who gets the Philly Fund Savers weekly email here? Okay, that comes from the Cultural Alliance. That's the major Cultural Alliance public-facing thing. And you people who didn't raise your hands should go to phillyfunguide.com and sign up, and you'll get an email every week with half-price tickets to great cultural events around the city. So we had this vision. Well, we knew we needed a new website, right? We started our project knowing that we needed a new website because we had, a static HTML website, a website that just uploaded files and they sat there. People called them up in their browser, and you had to monkey with the code if you wanted to change anything on them. So we knew we wanted to change that. And as we started talking about how we wanted our website to serve our constituents, it became clear that we needed to have a relationship between our website and our database. We were only about 3 years into using a custom-built CRM, and made the difficult decision to put that on the table, as it were, as we started talking to vendors about this project. We asked the folks who had built our custom CRM if they could build a custom website on top of it, and their bid was astronomical. It made so much more sense to move to this model of 2 products that were supported and had predictable release schedules, had features that were going to continue to be developed by folks, even if we weren't paying for those features to be developed directly. And so we worked with Marcus's firm, and yeah, it was absolutely we bit off a little bit more than we could chew. I think that ultimately, we launched, and then there were sort of several iterative processes to sort of smooth things out over the subsequent years. So the unfortunate thing is, you're probably never done. We're all consultants. We make our money, taking money from nonprofits to build their technology solutions. I suspect that if I at least, if I didn't have a family to feed, I'd love to do it for free, but unfortunately I do. I'd love for nonprofits to be able to get all the technology help they need. But we haven't gotten to the point, technology has gotten us very far, but some of these tools are, it's very difficult to use these tools by yourself without having, really explored or, understanding them from the bottom up. And that's where folks like us can help an organization out. So with that, are there questions, comments?
So the way we'll work is Thomas will call on people, and Mills and I will run the mics. So
okay. So
I always get confused. I press the button
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Let's slide this. It's up. Just leave it up. Just leave it on. Yep.
It feels to me like many of the people who might be here looking for something have very similar requirements that would be served by something that was out of the box, that didn't need all of the customization. Do you find that you're building the same systems over and over and over again, or does every organization have some slight twerk that you need to cater to? It feels to me like it shouldn't be this complicated. That there ought to be a fairly basic, out of the box thing for what we need is a directory of our membership.
Yeah. Let me answer it. So with CiviCRM, and I'll let Mark talk about Salesforce. There's a company called Civi Hosting, and for $20 a month, they will install CiviCRM for you, and you can run it. You can run your website with them, and that is a really good solution for a small nonprofit just starting out, and it will work out of the box, and you don't have to worry about installing it or anything like that. They'll do that for like $25. It's pretty inexpensive. For a small nonprofit, that's a really good solution. You'll learn it as you go, and there's a lot of people in this Civi community that will help you in small amounts here and there. There's a really large community out there that will certainly help you. But so that's generally not the people who we're working with. We're working with larger organizations that need that have much more sophisticated needs, that have this integration requirements between their website and their CRM in maybe more than just out-of-the-box ways. But certainly with CiviCRM, using Civi Hosting, and there's other hosting providers out there, we've just used those several times. I will recommend if a client comes to me and says, here's what I want to do, I'll say, well, do you have enough funds to pay for a year of Civi Hosting? I would recommend, if you really have nothing more than that, is go there and play with it for a year. You can eventually learn how to import your data, and if it completely trashes, you can say, just kill my database and let's start up again, and that will cost you $25. So you can really learn for very, very little bit of money.
Is that cityhosting.com? Where would you find it?
Cityhosting.com, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and we're not associated with them at all.
Yeah.
So.
Well, there is, I think, because of the nature of Drupal and Salesforce, which are meant to be highly customizable, it is very difficult to have sort of an out of the box solution. There are one CMS, which is Joomla, does have, I think it's called Soapbox and Soapbox Exchange. Nonprofit Soapbox, and it's done by PicNet, which is actually a really great company. We really like the owner, Ryan.
But don't use Drupal. I mean Joomla. Oh, I didn't mean to say. Sorry.
So there are some solutions, and this is starting to mature. I think that whole sector. There's an installation of Drupal called Springboard that's built on the suite that is supposed to be a little more plug and play, but it's still not there yet. And it is really very hard to build just a monolithic solution on these two platforms that really are meant to be flexible and sort of moving. So it is a little more difficult.
But with City, if you want a donation page and maybe a sign up for email, that's your basic starting of a CRM. That's very easy to do by yourself.
And just real quickly, the nonprofit starter pack the foundation has built, that so you can, if you are a nonprofit that's interested in getting Salesforce, you go to salesforcefoundation.org, you sign up for a trial, and you can indicate when you sign up that you want a trial with the nonprofit starter pack already installed. And similarly, it's but these are the problem is that even they're big and complicated enough pieces of software that it's hard to focus on the pieces that you need if you have simple requirements. It's hard to sort of shut out all the other stuff. And the thing that is especially difficult is any kind of data migration. That almost always, but yeah, that's a technically challenging task, and one that a lot of nonprofits that are trying to implement themselves, hit the rocks on. Is it on this side? Yeah, let's switch sides. So, Jim, and then.
Yeah, so thanks for talking about the Salesforce Foundation part. I guess that was my question. Salesforce is such a monolith, and it has so many, different kind of partner apps and plugins and this and that, menu options. I would kind of expect that there is some kind of like a captive website. You want Salesforce? Well, here, if you use this templated kind of shell, you can have all the bells and whistles of our CRM in this simplified website that we give you, as opposed to trying to integrate. So that's my question, and I kind of hear that that's a yes.
Right. So Salesforce has the foundation is built for nonprofit certified. It doesn't do this web-based integration stuff. It's for basically taking this complicated database that's optimized for business-to-business sales operations, right? The Canon copier guy wants to sell you the newest model, and adapts it so that it works for membership, donations, households, and understanding individuals.
But kind of like as a back office thing, not necessarily integrated into a public-facing website.
Right. So
it doesn't
once
even
you're
have.
talking about once you're talking about integrating public-facing stuff with Salesforce, now there are things short of actual integration. So there are solution providers that sell you not a whole. My mic's been off though. So that sell you not a whole website, but will sell you a form solution to accept online donations that will then be automatically recorded in Salesforce. Okay. But it's going to live not on your website.
Got it. That's where CiviCRM is natively integrated. So it's really one solution. Your Drupal Civi is really one solution set.
And we also have some clients who have a bit of a hybrid. Maybe they can't afford to build some functionality in Drupal, but they want a Drupal site. They want to start there, and they use one of these form services. FormStack is one. There are a few others where they just basically rent that donation form or that event registration form, and it still passes their data into Salesforce, as Thomas was saying. So there's lots of ways to kind of take steps along the way. That's not an optimal solution, but if you don't have the budget and you don't think you have a place to go to get it, that is an option.
Got it. Thanks.
So we've got, I can't see her. Yep, right there.
Marcus, you mentioned that there are some grants available for consultants like you guys through a couple of places here. Can you share with us who's providing these grants?
I can. I know that there's the Pew, it's actually the OMG Center, manages some capacity building grants for them, and I have to find out the actual name of that program. But a number of projects we've worked on were funded by that funding.
Yeah, I found the same thing. The Philadelphia Area Foundation, and the word capacity building is really critical. In fact, I've got a little paragraph that I'll often give to people, and they'll say, "Here are the things you want to talk about. You want to talk about how our current systems are not integrated well. We're very inefficient in how we're working. We cannot grow with our current systems. Where we have a better technology situation, we will be able to grow our capacity. We'll be able to be more effective, more efficient, serve our constituents better." That usually is pretty effective. And right now, at least my discussions with different foundations, because sometimes they'll actually talk to me about the nonprofit that has put in a request. And right now, from what I'm hearing, is that this capacity building is really an area of high funding need, and they're really doing a lot in that area this year. So.
And I mean, years ago, funding technology projects, funding websites that would never happen. So putting it in the perspective of we're going to be able to serve more people more effectively, we're going to be able to stand on our own as fundraisers, because we can now pursue individual donations or corporate donations in ways that we couldn't previously. We're going to be able to look at the people we serve, and if it makes sense to reach out to those people and have them give back to our organization, either as donors later or as volunteers, a CRM lets you do that. It lets you understand all of your relationships with all of the various constituencies you serve, and then where one person might overlap multiple constituencies. So when you have that information, you can serve people better, raise funds more effectively, and then really understand your capacity as an organization and where you need to go, how to budget better, how to manage your own internal processes better, and that always makes for a better.
So we've got a couple more right here, and then we'll come back over here. Okay. All right, let's go back.
You sort of follow up on what you were just saying, and to make it more granular. If you've got an organization with a budget with less than $100,000 budget, and you've got someone that's a staff person who has a tough time running QuickBooks, but you have a need for membership dues of getting them, putting out a quarterly newsletter, which is basically, a lot of volunteer work, getting donations, and then running probably a quarterly event where you're able to put the notice out, get the registration, accept credit cards, and, ideally sort of cloud-based so everybody has access to it. Does city hosting basically accomplish that?
Yeah, I mean, Civi hosting is one of the places that you can get Civi up and running. I said they charge $20 a month.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Now, and then you can also go out and get a lot of free support from the community. What I get scared of is when people say, okay, this membership sign up form isn't exactly the way they want, so they have an intern that goes and codes something in PHP.
Name, address, name, rank, and serial number.
If that's all you want, it's a very good solution for you.
Okay, good, thank you.
And you can also try, like CiviCRM has a free website. If you go to their website, you can do demos, and you can pretty much do anything you want in that demo.
Cool. Let's go to the end here, and then we'll go. Okay. Don't fight. Go ahead. Speak up.
Okay. Well, to sort of piggyback on Civi hosting, because that's what I was looking at earlier today. I have a question about sort of how out of the box usable is it? Is it I can throw some kind of a Drupal theme on it, and then everything looks like that theme more or less when I use it? CiviCRM, say I set up a donation page on CiviCRM. Drupal has already got a theme on it. Does that basically work, or is it more complex than
Basically, yeah. I mean, it's going to look like your basic CiviCRM form, but it will definitely work for you, yeah. I just remember if you're going to start taking money, you also need an SSL certificate, which does cost money. I didn't mention that earlier. Yeah, that's very important. But they can set it up for you right there.
Anybody on this side, Bob?
It's hard to pick just one question, but I guess if I had to pick one, a website and a web browser is one kind of web-based delivery, if you will. But the another big one is mobile devices. So I'm just curious, from your experience, does that come up in this audience, and how do you address it? Does Drupal and with Salesforce and stuff, do you find yourself doing more mobile stuff?
So one of the other challenges in working in this sector is that it's amazing when you have the funding to do the website and the integration, and then to do a mobile app on top of that. Usually there just isn't. That's not a priority. We tend to build responsive websites that work across all platforms, and so that our forums also work across all platforms. So we haven't had the call to actually build specific mobile apps for that do integrate with Salesforce. But if we did, we'd probably use Drupal, still sort of serving the back end and having that data go from Drupal into Salesforce.
And just one comment on that, and because we also work with Salesforce, is the new Salesforce One product is meant to be done, is meant for that exact reason. We're actually working with an organization out in Colorado, the Colorado Coalition of Land Trusts, and we built an application there called Locate in Salesforce, which they're just past security review, should be selling in the next week or so. And that is what land trusts really want, is to be able to go out in the field, survey all of their land, mark off all the check boxes that they need, tell the government where things are, where the water's flowing, everything like that. So in that case, building it on Salesforce One, that's you call it Salesforce One, right? Yeah, is going to be a really big advantage. So that's sort of like the next phase. So I think that's going to be a big plus. I'm looking forward to seeing how that works.
This is slightly related. My last stint at a fairly large not-for-profit was, number one, a data migration nightmare that you talked about, but also the fact that they had a high volume of transactions, and what they did was, between doing Google AdWords and mobile advertising and things like that, they could not figure out how to take any of their SEO work and figure out what the conversions were conversions coming through the website were, and it just seemed like an impossible task to accomplish in terms of figuring out, what was, where some of, and some people told me you can't even do that, but we kept trying to figure out, where, even though all of the AdWords and SEO and everything else were coded, it still was very difficult to figure out where the transactions actually came from, so we could get some sense of conversion.
So I think there's a few different things you're talking about there. One is about analytics and about user behavior and understanding sort of paths through your website that led to a conversion and a transaction. And that's one way of looking at activity on your site, and Google Analytics will help you do that, and they have really good videos and documentation about how to set up those reports. That's a very specific set of information that you need.
And that was how we tried to.
and you had trouble with that, yeah. And there are people who, again, if you can't, there's a lot of stuff out there that you can do DIY, and if you sort of meet the wall after months of work and can't move past it, go out and look for help. And sometimes there's volunteers, there's other people who can help you at least understand, or organizations consultants that will work pro bono. I mean, there's ways that you can use your resources to get some technical expertise. But one of the other things that you can do that we haven't really talked about is actually, when you have an integration like this between a public-facing website and a CRM, you can start to look at interaction patterns in your CRM. So you can see every time a user posts a comment or posts a piece of content, or in some other way contributes or engages you on your website, you can actually measure that and sort of pass those interactions, give them a value, and create an object in Salesforce that sort of tracks that. And you can then look. I'm looking at my one contact, and yeah, I can see they've made 5 donations. They've come to 2 events, and look, they're actually active users on our website. They've posted several comments, and they're or maybe there's a membership portal, and there's things they're doing on the member portal. So it gives you a much more sort of rich picture of who that person is and how you're interacting with them, or how they're interacting with you.
Just one quick thing. I'm not sure if this helps, but with CiviCRM and a lot of other CRMs, if you're, let's say, registering for a different event and you want to see, well, did they got to the registration page, but did they actually complete that registration, or go to the donation page and actually complete that donation? In CiviCRM, you can set up 1,000 donation pages, and they'll all have some ID, and you can go to Google Analytics and see which one people went to, but you can't see, out of the box, which ones actually completed. There's a thank you page, and it's just one, and it infers a bunch of the other things within, so it's not in the URL anymore. If you want to do that, that takes, it's not that hard, and I'm not going to get into it technically right now, but that's definitely doable. And if you wanted some help on that, there's a lot of consultants that can help you. But that's a very common issue with CRMs, is people say, look, I can see who came to my donation page, I can see who came to my registration page, but all I see is 500 people hitting my thank you page. I don't know which one fell off or which one moved through. Was that the issue that you were having?
Yeah, that was one of them in
Yeah.
membership enrollment. There
Yeah,
was an issue.
it's probably the same exact thing because that's a common issue with CRM SEO.
Yeah, so this is one of the sort of places that Salesforce really excels for larger nonprofits in particular. So one of the things that exists in the Salesforce ecosystem is the app exchange, right? So think of your iPhone or your Android phone, and it does a lot of cool stuff when you get it. But if you really want to make it work the way you want it to work, you go to the App Store for your phone and you install the apps. Salesforce has a similar type of arrangement, and because it is so widely used in the for-profit sector, what we call marketing automation is a well-solved problem, typically not a very cheaply solved problem. However, Salesforce has just has recently acquired two big firms, one called Pardot, one called ExactTarget. And so they are now making licenses for those products available through the foundation at a discounted rate. Still not what I would call a cheap solution, but a cheaper solution. And those products allow you to do really fine-grained tracking of, who's clicking on what emails and then what transactions are they taking after that. And that really, when you start to collect that data, it's sort of not worth it to collect that detail of data unless you're doing a lot of transactions, and because for a small number of transactions, you're not going to be able to make any decisions based on the trends, right? You need to have a lot of transactions to be able to have enough data to alter your decision making in that kind of scenario. We have one right up front here. Race.
Hi. First of all of these, if you put in a lot of this raw data, whether it's membership or this, that, and the other, and you put it in and you work with it after a year or two or whatever, can you then, if you're not satisfied with all this, be able to extract all that raw data, or is it just coming out in spreadsheets or some sort of reports? What does this do? And I'm getting, maybe the rest of them don't understand it, but you have to have a certain type of website set up, or has to have certain specifications to therefore be able to take any of these that you're talking about, whether it's an out of the box or yours?
Well, from a Civi perspective, your first question is, how do I get the data if I don't like it anymore? Civi, you own your data. You can get at it from the database itself. You can get all the data out through exporting the data into spreadsheets. So it just depends on what your skill sets are. Gotcha. But either of those are completely possible. I'd say every single piece of data can come out in an export into a spreadsheet. It's not completely true depending on how you set it up, but if you've done it well, then yes you can. Can any website work with CiviCRM? Any Drupal, WordPress, Joomla site can work with CiviCRM. My caveat with that is there are a lot of modules, and this is true in Salesforce too. Sometimes those modules don't work well together, and sometimes they break other modules. So there are, and it's becoming less and less of an issue, but there's certainly modules that if you are running them on your website, CiviCRM will not work. There's not a lot of them out there. I can't even name a popular one right now off the top of my head. It used to be Lightbox, which is a popular photo viewing one. That's no longer an issue, but there's not really an issue. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, but the only other one that I had is you talk about consultants and that we should see a consultant, etc. If we write down our specs and say, hey, this is the website that we have up, etc., and we email or whatever our specs to someone, who could be some of those someones that we could email them to?
Like on CiviCRM, if you go to their website, there is a list of professional organizations. And which one is this? On CiviCRM on their website, okay, there's a list of professional organizations, and they've got one or both labels. Like our organization is a sustaining partner which means that we give them money every year, amongst other things. And also we're an active contributor. And the way CiviCRM works is that they are dependent on organizations like us doing customizations, if you will, of the software and then putting it back into the core so that the next user, the next organization can then utilize that. But there's a whole list of organizations on there, probably 50 to 80 or so.
So it would be
CiviCRM.org.
Oh, CR. Yeah, you got it.
Mm-hmm.
Is the hosting the same one, or which?
No, Civi Hosting is a not related organization. They just do a lot of Civi hosting. They just happen, that's their expertise. That's their claim to fame. They're really good with small sites.
So what's our URL?
CiviHosting.com.
.com?
Yeah.
CITY?
CIVI, Civi, sorry. CIVI.
Say what?
I wish. CIVI, and the organization that is the developer of this is CiviCRM.org, and Civi Hosting is CiviHosting.com.
I'm looking for a
Yeah.
I'll try and gather up some of these links and post them as a comment to the meetup page. I'd love to do a quick shout out for a favorite organization, another favorite organization of mine called Idealware. So Idealware is an organization that evaluates, that researches, evaluates, and reports on software for small and mid-sized nonprofit organizations. They are at idealware.org. I used to be on their board. Now I'm actually doing some volunteer work for them for their Salesforce instance. Part of their business model is they produce reports, and they have produced reports about low-cost donor management systems, and they recently did a report specifically about the Salesforce landscape for nonprofits, and they've also done reports about CMS solutions. In addition to being great information in and of themselves, they support those reports with advertising revenue. So there are consultant listings by region in each of those reports. So you download the PDF, you get all this great information, and then you can just turn to the back, find listings for a variety of organizations. Paul and Marcus is both included in at least one or two of those, I'm fairly certain, as well as other practitioners in the area and nationally. These days, I support buy local, but there, a lot of this work can be done remotely if you have a contact who's out of the region. Yeah.
About Salesforce, I thought I remember something about like Angel Force or Angel Cloud or Sales. Didn't they have? I thought they used to have like a nonprofit wing with the word angel in it, or am I imagining Angel Cloud or Angel Force? I thought
that's not one that I know about.
I guess not.
So are you talking about sort of?
I thought it was like their pro bono
support.
wing.
So I actually at the Dreamforce conference in November, I spoke on a small panel to a very crowd smaller than this about pro bono Salesforce projects. There are a few organizations that broker pro bono implementations for technology projects. And so the Salesforce Foundation does some of that, and they do some of that matching with Salesforce employees who have 1% of their time to donate to nonprofit organizations. And then they also do it through other, so Catchafire is one of those, and then I'm blanking on the name of the other one, but I'll look that up and can post that. Those typically, as you can imagine, that's a very popular service, right? The supply demand, there's a pretty noticeable supply demand mismatch, unfortunately. But they will help you develop a proposal, put it out to their prospective volunteers, and you may find somebody that can help you out.
So earlier we talked briefly about using Salesforce or CiviCRM for handling collection of donations. And you mentioned if you're going to collect donations, you have to have an SSL security certificate. Just general comment that if you're going to collect donations, there's, I mean, you all know, but everyone else might not know. It's a very high. There's a great deal of security and information management and documentation that has to go into handling credit card transactions. So I discourage anyone from trying to process their own credit card transactions unless they're really
Right. Well, with CiviCRM, they only works with some of the larger credit card processors like PayPal and authorized.net, just to name two. And I definitely recommend using a well-known payment
So
processor.
in that case, am I correct that you wouldn't need your own SSL?
Yeah, if you use the lowest version of PayPal, right? Yeah, that you are 100% correct. It will go off to the PayPal site to complete that transaction, and it'll put the data back into CiviCRM. But that also has the lowest retention rate people getting through those forms, because all of a sudden you're on a PayPal form and people get confused. So you have to consider that as well.
And what's the option to using a PayPal, or it's actually doing the transaction within your website?
No, it's actually passed to authorized.net or PayPal. You never hold any of that data in your website at all, ever. It's just passed.
But you're speaking of the lowest completion rate is going through PayPal.
Oh yes, because when you move off of your website, then all of a sudden you're at a PayPal form, and some people just get confused and they feel that you've moved someplace, I don't understand it, and I'm going to stop.
But what's the option? Is the alternative to that?
Is that if you use the higher level version of PayPal or authorized.net or one of those other accounts, then the transaction, the forms on your website itself takes that credit card, and then it passes it over a secure sockets layer to authorized.net or PayPal or Banco or any of those other payment processors.
Let me go ahead.
I was just going to say, but if this is something that you don't have the capacity to install an SSL certificate, not the easiest thing to do in the world. You don't have the capacity to really worry about what gateway you want to use. It's often best to go ahead and rent a form. Go and find a service where you can put your logo on the form, and although the user is leaving your website, and it probably won't be themed like your website, and some services will let you put some HTML in there and make it look a lot more, make the experience a little more seamless. But even if it isn't, it's still less dissonant than going to PayPal, and encountering a form that is not at all familiar or is not at all branded as your property. And I would absolutely recommend the fines are steep for any any compromise of user data around this. And you should really, if you don't have the capacity and can't pay for it, just rent it for it.
Well, like if you use like Civi Hosting, they take care of that for you. So all you have to do is tell them I need to take donations on my site, and I forget the exact dollar amount, but it's not that expensive. They will install that for you.
But what's going to happen in that scenario when you have your own secure form, right? So all that, right? So you're going to stay on www.mycoolorganization.org. You're going to put in your credit card information. You're going to see the little lock. You're going to trust that information is being securely transmitted to that website. But on the back or on the other side, with either of these solutions, you're not going to hold on to that credit card number. You're going to immediately pass that credit card number to your processor. You will never hold in your database full credit card numbers. You'll just pass that transaction off to somebody else.
But you have the information there as far as John Smith donated.
You'll have the contact information. Many of them will let you set up recurring donations. So if somebody says, I want to give you $20 a month, they're authorizing that recurring donation, and then that, and then every time that card gets charged, it's going to, mark that in your
Or if it's an
database.
event and you want to make sure that the people you're letting in have paid, it's there basically immediately after the person's paid.
Exactly.
As far as your information, yes.
Yep. Got a question in the back?
Yeah, for CiviCRM, what do you recommend for what payment processors to use?
We generally recommend authorized.net unless you need to do recurring SCHs, and authorized.net and Civi does not handle that. There's a couple payment processors. Vanco is one of them.
They don't do recurring ACH, but recurring credit card.
Absolutely, yeah. Like we work with a lot of Christian ministry organizations that get large donations from a recurring basis, and they're encouraging people to use their bank accounts instead of getting a 3% hit.
Yeah, that's who we're authorized on Vanco.
Well, yeah, Vanco is, I highly recommend using authorized.net in almost all circumstances unless you need recurring ACH.
Any other specific questions? All right, well, thanks everybody for coming out. I'm definitely going to stay around, so if people have questions afterwards, please come up. I hope that...
I have one quick demo that I can show that shows Drupal integration with Civi.
Great.
Want to see that?
Tell these guys.
While he's setting this up, I'm gonna I'll do if you're interested in Salesforce next week. So next week is Philly Tech Week, as some of you may know, and there's going to be a full day Salesforce user conference at the University City Science Center. Phillyforce.com is where you can go to find out about that.
All right. So this is one of our clients, Vision Service Adventures. They provide opportunities for teenagers to do trips to all parts of the world and provide services, basically a volunteer mission organization. And as you can imagine, the application process is pretty rigorous, and they have to keep a lot of health forms and sort of everything. So they wanted to keep all of that data in a CRM, but they wanted to have a very nice user interface for the students and parents to come in and input that data. So we built for them an integration with Drupal and CiviCRM. And an example, so this is their website. You log in if you have an account with the My Visions login, which I've done this over here with a sample version, and they have given me permission to show this, so I'm not just sort of like showing my client stuff. So what you see here is a Drupal page when you log in. It's called My Visions, and it's got a bunch of tabs across the top. Your home, profile, health information, travel, and programs. This information right here are all the different forms that they need to fill out, and you can have different statuses: submitted, completed, incomplete, not required. And here's their tuition and some other information that's coming based on the program that you've signed up for. All of this data is stored in CiviCRM, but it's all being displayed on the website. So there's a tight integration between CiviCRM and Drupal. So as I'm logged in here, I can get a good view as to where I am, and if I need to fill out more forms, I can go here, and here's my profile information. So I'm Sally student. Here's my information. You'll notice I can't change my first name, and this is set up on purpose. They don't want them changing their name once they've already submitted their form. And so you can see this isn't quite complete, so it's not a completed form. I can save this information, and each one of these is its own separate form. I can do an e-signature right here, and all of this is stored within the back end in CiviCRM. What this organization wanted to do was, when everything was complete, they would lock this form down. So when everything is complete, they go in the back end and say, basically check a box and say, this form has been submitted, it's complete, and then the student can only view this information. They can no longer update it. There's also, this is a parent contract. So this has to be completed by the parent, and they specifically wanted this here, even though you can't do anything, because sometimes the students will log in and say, hey, my parents need to sign this contract, and we want them to know that, hey, you got to go to the parent form. So these forms look exactly the same whether you're a parent or a student, just some of the information is different. Here we have some different participant questions, and here's where they're showing their different tuition, and you can do an online tuition payment right from here, and that goes right into CiviCRM. And as you can imagine, on the health forms, there's a lot of different forms, waivers, credit card forms. Now this is not fill out your form, but this is basically print a form here. So we're not really accepting credit card. You can't just submit a credit card so that Visions can charge it in the future over the web. There's waivers. Each place where you're traveling has different information on what you need. So this is set up. All of this data is within Drupal, and the organization can change it whenever they want. And depending on which itinerary you're signed up for, they'll have different information here: passport, flight itinerary, and you name it. So now, this is not out of the box by any stretch of the imagination. We did not do anything that was custom, but the process to make this thing work between Civi and Drupal took a fair amount of thought. Probably it took more of our consulting time to help to develop the thought process behind this than did the actual coding. And that's very common, where a lot of organizations will come to us and say, this is exactly what we want to implement. Will you do that? And say, well, I think you want to find another organization, because we generally like to come in and help you think this thing through. Sometimes people will get it right, but oftentimes they'll need help from us or like Marcus's organization to help them think through, how should I display this with my users? So this is, I think, a pretty good example of a pretty sophisticated application that's been filled out by a few thousand students in the last couple of months. And we're going to be building, more onto this over the next couple of years. In fact, the next release is going to allow them to purchase products like T-shirts and backpacks and things like that. That's going to be the next tab that comes up.
You doing any e-signature with EchoSign or anything when they sign this contract?
Not with EchoSign. That's something that we're considering. But this is their process. I'm not sure what the legality of that e-signature is, but it's what they wanted to do. But we see this a lot. That's always a question I have is, how legal is that signature? But you are logged into their account and you're filling out your name. It's commonly done that way. I'm sure you guys have all seen that. So, do you have something you want to?
Where's the chat handle? Was that also done in
That's a Drupal module that goes out to an organization called Live Chat. So that is not related to CiviCRM. That could be installed in any Drupal website.
So this is a site that we did for the Energy Co-op, which is it's a local and sustainable energy provider. It uses all locally produced energy, and they sell electricity, heating oil, and biodiesel. They're a member-owned cooperative. So we needed to come up with a workflow that. First of all, they were managing in Salesforce a extremely complicated schema where they have electricity costs that are constantly updated from Pico. Also, heating oil and biodiesel is not integrated with this site. That's still sort of an offline process. But the actual amounts and types of products can change very frequently for them. And they had a really complex database. We helped them normalize it a little bit because there were some things about it that weren't quite. It just needed some refinement, especially to work with Drupal. But basically, what we produced for them was a front end that would allow someone to sign up as a member, purchase an electricity or heating oil product. All of the data about those products was being pulled in from, it all lives in Salesforce. And this is an asynchronous synchronization. So the data lives in both places, and Drupal manages to keep the data in sync. And it's done because we wanted to make sure there wouldn't be any performance issues. You don't want to have to constantly make live queries. Also, API calls can be a problem. And really, it just helps a lot with the user experience to do that. It's a little harder, but it does help. So you can start in the workflow by just entering your zip code. And this is querying data that, again, exists in Drupal, but Salesforce is the canonical source for this information. Select your product options, continue into the workflow, and then it asks you to become a member. And if you are a member already, it stops you there and tells you you've got to log in because there's an entire interface where members can log in and manage if they want to change their service, add new service at a new address. All of that happens through Drupal and gets passed to Salesforce. And I'm not going to continue on and actually become a member, but you can see there is a basic membership checkout form that includes an additional donation. So it prompts for an additional donation. That additional donation actually gets counted as a separate item in Salesforce, so that it's tracked as a membership is tracked as membership, an additional donation is tracked as donations, and you can follow through on the workflow. This is an example of a form that is taking billing information and will take credit card information as well, but again, it will not store that information on the website. PCI compliance is nonprofits will be hearing this a lot more. There are some rigorous requirements for making sure that you don't hold on to that data, and you don't want to violate any of those requirements. I'm going to go ahead and log in so you can see what it looks like as super admin. So there's a lot of, this is kind of dummy data. It doesn't make as much sense as if we logged in as one of the users. But you can see things like historical oil price data, and that will give you, basically it's pulling in data from Salesforce and then we're charting it. So you can sort of, track the pricing for that. They've got, simple forms in here that their members can fill out. And then all of their active accounts are here. They can update their profile information. So my address has changed. They can edit it, change the password. They can see their membership history and all of their renewal history as well. And again, this is all data that is mirrored in Salesforce. They can also report referrals. So this was really important for them because members get kind of a kickback for their referral rewards. And they're able to, report the referral here, and that also gets passed, and all that information is synchronized. And most importantly, what they can do for each of their accounts, and they can have multiple accounts. They can switch products and select a different product, and this all will update in Salesforce. So there's quite a lot you can do. I do want to show you just a simple example of the Salesforce, the mapping here between the Drupal object and the Salesforce object. So I'm logged in as an administrator. Your average end user will not see as many of the screens and options that I'm seeing, and obviously can't see how the data is mapped. But this gives you, for this particular record, the actual values across. So this is the values that are stored for Drupal, and the corresponding values in Salesforce. And then there are other, just to give you a quick look at the Salesforce suite. This is our version of the Salesforce suite. Actually, I can talk to anyone who wants to know sort of where this is at the moment. There's some forking that's going on in the community right now, and we're sort of pulling things back together again for the release of Drupal 8. But there are a few different versions of the Drupal 7 suite. But you can see here in the field maps, you can see where the Drupal object is, the Salesforce object. It allows you to define what the action is or the operation, and then you can also edit this. And so this is a GUI, right? So you're mapping these fields across both systems, but you can also, you can actually put some PHP in here to sort of change how values pass too. So there's a little bit that you can do, to modify that if the schema doesn't match particularly well. But like Paul said, this sort of scale of work takes a great deal of design and thought to do properly. We spent maybe 6 months going through their data and doing the design, and we had a workflow diagram at the end of this project that you can't even look at on one screen. I mean, it's kind of crazy. It's a work of art, and our information designer got applause when we showed it. But you really do have to think through these the workflows very carefully, how the data works, and the other caveat I think that I would say, as much as we cheerlead these kinds of solutions, they really need to be maintained very carefully, because you don't want to make changes in Salesforce to your schema that might impact the integration and potentially break it. So, you work with a vendor, they put this together for you, you can make any changes you want in Drupal and any changes you want in Salesforce, and, you get a call, oh my God, our donations aren't passing anymore, what happened? And a lot of times it's because an administrator who wasn't familiar with the project went in, changed some values, and then, we find out later, okay, well, we don't want to touch that. And no amount of documentation that we put out there prevents that. So there are challenges because they're very powerful systems. Any other questions?
I inherited a Joomla site, so that's what I'm working with. Can you just quickly, speak to some of the disadvantages of Joomla versus working with Joomla?
You seem to have more passion about this.
Well, I think from a web development standpoint, Joomla's fine. I know, but if you're going to integrate that in with CiviCRM, the biggest issue is that there's just not many CiviCRM Joomla experts out there, and there are a lot more modules in Joomla. Not modules. What are they called in Joomla? They're not a module. Anyone know that the Drupal word is module? It's not a extension.
It's a module in Joomla.
In Drupal, yeah. Well, whatever that thing is in Joomla, there's a lot more interactions with the Civi data, with the Civi module that creates a lot more issues. So, for example, we have a couple clients using Joomla that their WYSIWYGs sometimes just go away, and I have no idea why. We've also seen that the process of doing some integrations between Civi and Drupal on things like I just showed you are significantly harder to do. If you're using Joomla, I don't recommend that you change, but if you have a very sophisticated CiviCRM or any CRM implementation, I think it's not the best platform for that. Drupal is made specific, not specifically, but it's architected in a way to really utilize. It's very powerful, and it allows you to integrate, whether it's CiviCRM, Salesforce, IMIS. We've done integrations with a number of other CRMs. Salsa has another good Drupal implementation. I mean, it's just built for that. It's a lot more powerful.
Thank you.
But I'm sorry for you.
Any other questions? Well, great. Thanks again to everybody who came out and stayed.
Thanks for promising.
For more information, visit phillynetsquared.org or meetup.com/PHLNET2 and visit the video playlist at bit.ly/PHLNET2. This live stream program was a presentation of State Broadcast News, a division of the Lubetkin Media Companies, on the web at statebroadcastnews.com. For everyone at Philly Net Squared, this is Steve Lubetkin. Thanks for joining us, and take good care.